Hi everybody, I'm Steve Biss. Tonight we're here to talk about ESPN Baseball Tonight's Great Rotisserie Pay-Per-View Special. With me on my left are my two colleagues, Stan, we practiced this a million times, and Dave Chesney, both avid rotisserie players. And the reason we're here tonight to talk to Stan and Dave is because they're very interested in getting the latest and most up-to-date information about the rotisserie leagues and players and who to draft. And the best way to get that is by buying the Great Rotisserie Pay-Per-View Special that'll be on March 29th at 10 p.m. on channels 26 and 66 for only $19.95. And if you order tonight, order from the show tonight, you get to pick one of these two books and you'll get it free, a $19.95 value or more. It's like getting the pay-per-view event free. Good deal, right, Stan?
It's a great deal.
Okay. Well, a little bit about Stan, and our guest here. Stan is an Oklahoma City University School of Law graduate. He's written for Baseball Card News. And Collector's Sports Look. He's written for Sports Card Price Guide, Sports Card Value Line Review. He's a frequent guest on the John L. Rabin's Coast to Coast Sports Collectors radio show. Maybe you've seen him at the card shows because he's an avid card collector and memorabilia seller. And just all-around good guy. Welcome to the show, Stan.
Thanks, Steve.
On Stan's left and my left is Dave Chesney, baseball star in his own right in Jersey City. He's played for St. Peter's College. He holds St. Peter's records in runs, hits, and stolen bases. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you.
Dave is also an avid rotisserie player. He is also known as the Wizard of Wall Street. Is that not right?
By a few, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if you want to call in tonight and be part of the show and ask our experts any questions about rotisserie leagues, about who to draft, how they work, and just baseball questions in general, and more importantly, to get ahead of the rush and order the pay-per-view special, give us a call at 915-0350. And like I said, you'll get to pick one of these two really good books, The Rotisserie League Baseball by Glenn Wagner.
Glenn Wagner, initially, he actually started rotisserie baseball. A lot of people don't know that. Rotisserie baseball got its name when a bunch of guys were sitting around, not unlike what we're doing, and they said, boy, we'd like to really enjoy baseball a whole lot more. So why don't we start up this league based on statistics? And Glenn Wagner is one of the originals.
What do you know about this book, Stan? The Bill James Player Ratings.
Well, Bill James works with Stats Incorporated a lot. Bill knows stuff about Major League Baseball. He's worked with Dan Duquette of the Montreal Expos and now Florida Marlins systems. Bill James knows his information. Everything is solid in here. You can't go wrong picking either book.
And like I said, order the pay-per-view special for $19.95 through the show tonight by calling 915-0350, and you get to pick one of these two books for free. But not only that, later on in the show, we're going to have a trivia question where you could win a free airing of this great pay-per-view special. Stan, why would somebody want this special?
Well, there's a lot of people who play in these fantasy leagues, and you don't have the most up-to-date info when you subscribe to magazines, you're reading different publications that are sold on the newsstand. You don't have the most up-to-date info. It's very important to get that info out there. You want it to be timely. Most of the drafts happen a few days before the season starts. Season starts a week from this Sunday. So basically, if you want the most up-to-date info, you have to order the pay-per-view special. Otherwise, you're going to be trading on old information. Joe Carter was hurt, for example, just recently. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. A lot of people don't know that. If you're just going by the newsstand books, you think Joe Carter's healthy. So you might pick Joe Carter in the first round, and it's a bad move because he's not going to be playing for a while.
So it's very important to have the most current information just for that reason alone. You don't want to draft a player who you can't use, taking up roster space and not being productive for you.
No. If you grab a guy like that, you're going to kill your whole season. You don't want to have to play catch-up in rotisserie baseball and fantasy baseball. The key is to get out the gate fast, get off to a good start. You can make up some ground early, but if your guys start getting hurt, or you're playing with injured guys, and you're not paying attention to what's going on, you're just going to lose, and it's just a waste of time.
No doubt about it.
Dave, how long have you been involved in rotisserie league play?
I've been playing roughly 3 years. Had my own team. My first year, a friend dropped out of a league, and I just sort of took over his team, and I've been just growing with it. I'm in 2 leagues currently.
Why would somebody, and this is for both of you, obviously you guys are baseball fans, but
I think the main reason, like here, especially, unfortunately, the Mets are not the team we all like them to be. So you're watching the Mets. I was pretty much a Mets fan. And not doing very well, so it's rather depressing, and you want to get more involved in the other teams. Expansion, teams in the West Coast. This way you get involved with all the players, West Coast, different teams out there. You learn new players. You don't just do the box score and kind of ignore it. Now you have actual interest in it. And you say, oh, Seattle did this last night. My player did this. I had a guy pitching. You get to see more players. It's just a whole lot of fun, really.
If any viewers out there tonight have any questions for our guest, call 915-0350. You could also order this pay-per-view special and get a free book. So 915-0350 is the number, and I believe we're taking a call on the main line. Okay, main line. Here we go. Hi, it's Steve. You're on Talking Baseball.
Hi, Stevie. It's Paul. How you doing?
How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. Listen, I know you guys were talking a little bit about the Mets. They're really not a bad team to pick players from a rotisserie standpoint. I'll tell you why. You got a lot of guys who are coming up now. They're going to get playing time. I think that's a key thing in the rotisserie. You want to pick players who are going to get playing time. You got this one kid, Vina, that's coming up. They're dying to find a spot for him. Some of these Mets are going to have good users. I mean, not many of them, but some of them will produce. And I think the Mets are a good team. These lower-level teams are coming up. The Braves, the Phillies, last couple of years just came into their own, and all of a sudden the youth kind of just hung out. So really, look through spring training, follow the spring training notes in the papers, and you could probably pick up some good players and get quality players that other guys might not get.
The only problem I have with that is, you're going to get some players where people are not even going to want to look on that roster, figuring the whole team is a different state. If you take an outfielder, let's say, for instance, who's people looking at think he's going to be a rising young star, if you have too many young players, they're going to have to actually share time. While if you go with an established team, an established player, he's going to be out there every day, almost every day. He's not sharing the time. So I mean, things really add up.
When you're putting a team together, would it be worth taking a gamble on, say, a AAA player who has a shot at making the team and possibly putting together some good statistics over the season? Or is it better to go with an established player?
Well, I think that you want to go with someone who's established, someone who's put up solid numbers every year. You don't want to take a chance and grab a guy who maybe wants to make the roster. Because if the guy doesn't make the roster, he's not going to put numbers up and he's not going to produce for you. That's just a wasted pick. You really want to go out and grab Carlos Baerga, grab a John Bullard, someone who's put up numbers in the past, who's going to do it again, who's going to be somebody you can depend on. You can maybe draft, borderline fringe player later on in the draft, take him in the 24th, 25th round. You want him to be an extra player. You don't want to have to rely on a guy like that. Like Paul raised an interesting point. Sure, the Mets are an up-and-coming team, and you might grab a guy like a Jeremy Burnitz. But Burnitz is unique. He's going to be playing this year. You have Fernando Vina. You don't know if he's going to be playing more than 2 weeks. You might draft him in the 4th or 5th round, think you got a steal, maybe he'll do good early. A lot of people don't realize Doug Saunders came up last year. He hit 384 his first week. After that, he was downhill. He finished the season hitting about 183, and Doug Saunders just wasn't a good pick. So if you pick Doug Saunders, your team probably didn't do too well.
So that's why having the most current information is important. And doing your homework before a draft is important, and why having one of these two books is important. And the way to get this book is to call 915-0350 and order the pay-per-view special, and that'll even give you more current information about how to set up tips on how to draft your team. Because especially in the later rounds, I suppose, the general managers who do their homework the most are going to have a better chance of succeeding over the season.
Oh, exactly. For example, David and I were in a league together last year, and I drafted John Crook, I believe, in about the 18th round or so. John Kruk's a guy who a lot of people would say, well, he can't run, he's not going to put up home runs, but he hits you for a high average every year. Sometimes it pays to take somebody who will put up numbers in 2 categories rather than all 4 if they're very high numbers. John Olerud hit 363 last year. Even if he did nothing else, at least he would help carry you. You don't want to draft him early. You want to draft a guy like John Olerud late, because drafting him early is going to hurt your team. But as long as he puts up numbers in 2, 3, 4 categories, that's something that's going to help you. That's why Marquise Grissom is highly rated in both of these books.
That's very valuable advice. And for more valuable advice, order the pay-per-view special, where it's only $19.95. And I'm going to give you the dates for them. Tuesday, March 29th at 10 p.m. on channels 26 and 66. Also on Friday, April 1st at 11 p.m. on channel 66. The day after April Fool's Day, which is April 1st, April 2nd, it's on twice. 1 p.m. on channel 66 and 2 p.m. on channel 26. April 3rd, channel 26 at 2 p.m., followed by a showing on April 6th on channel 66 at 10 o'clock. So you have many opportunities to see the special, to take advantage of it, but you should order it sooner than later, because you got to do your homework, got to have this information for your draft, and you want to have an advantage over all the other people out there drafting. So order the special, have this advantage, and maybe your team will succeed. We're going to go to a call. Hi, it's Steve.
Hi, this is Carlos.
Hi, Carlos. What's your question?
I have a draft strategy where I usually spend the most money on my infielders, and I try not to spend too much money on the outfielders. The theory being there are so many outfielders and not that many quality hitting infielders. That's how you should spend your money. Just wondering what the panel thinks about this.
Gentlemen?
I would agree 100%. If you could find a quality, up the middle quality shortstop, take a name everyone's heard of, Cal Ripken, a quality second baseman, a Roberto Alomar, a Baerga, someone who could put up numbers. That list is extremely short. You get 3, 4, 5, 6 guys deep, and next thing you know, you're picking people very mediocre stats. And also what the caller had said, where outfielders are, there were about 3, 4, 5 premier outfielders. You got your Griffey Jr., you got your Bonds, but you also have another 20, 30 guys that are very similar, can put up numbers, and you can hold off in the draft and pick a few of these players.
How many leagues do you play in?
Just one currently.
And how long have you played in it?
I'm sort of new. I'll be starting my 3rd year.
How'd you do the first 2 years?
First year won the championship, and last year we finished in 2nd.
Can't argue with that.
No.
Who's going to be your first pick?
I'm sorry?
Who's to be your first pick?
Oh, first pick? Probably someone like Baerga.
Yeah, excellent first pick.
Yeah.
I think Carlos Baerga is probably the best second baseman right now in the major leagues. I think he's better than Alomar. Alomar has some questions with the broken leg. Once again, the injuries play into that. Drafting Carlos Baerga, you just can't go wrong.
Okay.
Which one of these books do you think are better? Whoops.
I currently have a Bill James, so I ordered the rotisserie.
Okay, good choice. Thanks. You have any other questions for the panel?
How do you feel about mixed leagues?
I think mixed leagues are good. They tend to be all-star leagues, but it doesn't matter that much, because you're going to pick good, solid players in a mixed league. You're going to have when he says mixed leagues, he means American and National League teams combined. Some rotisserie leagues will only be American League, or it will only be National League players. A mixed league combines them both. And I think that in a league like that, you can pick an all-star team, and you have a little bit more advantage. You don't have to do as much homework, but if you don't do your homework, it's going to show in the standings.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
You can be part of the show and order the pay-per-view special by calling 915-0350. And we'll be back with more of your calls and more great baseball discussion right after these messages.
From the director of Boys in the Hood comes another powerful movie on pay-per-view. One woman. Jackson, Tupac Shakur, Poetic Justice. Compelling, touching. Order Poetic Justice on pay-per-view.
Light heavyweight champion, Rick Rufus. World super middleweight champion, Sean E. Terrio.
Championship is going nowhere. It's staying around my belt.
You can plainly tell that the war of words has now started officially.
The brawl in Montreal. Rufus versus Terrio plus 2 more championship fights.
We want you. It's your moment of glory.
No offer
Did you ever think I'd make a 6-figure salary?
is worth lying for.
So far, the kid's been real predictable.
No secret
Lawyers at your firm sure seem accident prone.
is worth killing for.
4 dead lawyers out of 41.
No job
I'd hate to lose this young man.
is worth dying for.
I haven't done anything.
The Firm on pay-per-view. Don't miss Tom Cruise in the suspense thriller of the year.
Welcome back to Talking Baseball on City 3 TV. And the reason we're here to talk about the ESPN rotisserie pay-per-view special for only $19.95. Okay, $19.95 gets you all the information you need to succeed in your own fantasy league. Not only that, when you call in to order the pay-per-view special, you'll get a choice, a free gift. This is a bribe. Call us. One of these 2 books. The Rotisserie League Baseball book by Stan's good friend,
Glenn Wagner.
And let's not forget probably the most famous book by Bill James. Okay, so call 915-0350, be part of the show, order the pay-per-view event, and talk to our noted colleagues. Okay, all right, let's just go take a question here. I got so many questions I want to ask these guys. For the novices out there, that don't really know anything about rotisserie league play, you talked earlier about you want a player who's good over 4 categories. Why don't you just go into that a little bit and explain what exactly that means? You draft a team, and how do you compile wins and losses, and what do the stats actually mean?
Well, generally the way most leagues will work is they're based on 8 basic categories, 4 offensive and 4 defensive. Actually, 4 offensive and 4 pitching. Defense doesn't really matter. So Ozzie Smith, if he can't hit, over 200, he's not worth anything to you. What you want to get is guys who are strong hitters. You want home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, and average on the offensive end. On the pitching end, you want wins, saves, walks, and hits to innings pitched. It's called the WHIP ratio, ERA. So innings pitched is sometimes the 5th category that we do use. You want to get pitchers or hitters who are strong in those specific categories. Generally, that's why you won't see pitchers go in the first round, because a pitcher, if you grab a relief pitcher, he could be strong in only 3 categories. Most relievers who get a lot of saves are not going to get you a lot of wins. If you grab a starter, he's not going to get you any saves, so you can only have 3 category max. But when you go and grab a guy offensively, you can have someone who's a good home run hitter, like Marquise Grissom, perfect example, 19 homers, had 93 RBIs, scored 95 runs. He hit, I believe, 310, and he stole about 55, 60 bases. So you want to get a guy who's a strong category performer.
So drafting a rotisserie league team or a fantasy league team is a lot different than drafting a real Major League Baseball team. The strategy that's involved in picking your teams are different.
No doubt about it. Again, defense plays absolutely no part in it. You don't want an Ozzie Smith. You don't want a Jose Lind. You're not looking for someone who's going to catch and throw the ball. You're just looking for offensive performers.
So say, like, if this was the 1970s, a Dave Kingman might be a really good pick for a rotisserie team, but not for a real team.
Yeah, it came in exactly right. You know, he couldn't catch a cold, couldn't throw the garbage out, but he could hit a home run. Every home run's a run and an RBI, so he's the type of guy, you know, he'd be a good rotisserie player.
How long have you gentlemen been involved in rotisserie league play?
Well, I've been playing about 5 years. You know, and I like to think I take it pretty seriously. I try to keep abreast of what's going on. Once March 1 rolls around, you really got to keep on top of things because there's players getting hurt. A lot of people don't realize Sid Fernandez has bursitis in his left shoulder. He's not going to be pitching until mid-May. You know, if you don't order this special, they're going to talk about it on the special. You'll find out about it. But if you don't order it, you're going to walk into a draft blindly. You're going to get hit hard.
If you guys had a draft tomorrow, I don't know if you want to give this away, but I guess it doesn't matter. What would your top 3 picks be?
I think my top 3 picks, first and foremost, be Carlos Baerga, because second baseman who hit for power are just impossible to find. Second would probably be Roberto Alomar, because again, he puts up numbers that you're just not going to see. My third pick would possibly be Ryan Sandberg, although I'm kind of questioning his health right now. Maybe Chris Hoyles, because catchers who hit for power, who hit for average, who knock in runs, score runs, are just impossible to find. You don't want to grab a guy like a Barry Larkin, who, although he can put up great numbers and has in the past, he's hurt almost every year. Dave and I went through this before last year's draft, saying Barry Larkin's not a guy you want to draft in the first round if he's available, just because he's always hurt. There's always something. He's not a gamer. He's not a guy who's willing to go the full 9 yards for you. Don't you agree, Dave?
What about you, Dave?
I mean, no doubt about it. It's obviously, I mean, if you pick Barry Bonds as your first player, I mean, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. If you pick a Ken Griffey Jr., Marquise Grissom, Stan elaborated on all his credentials, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. They're going to put up all the numbers for you. Again, there are plenty of outfielders out there that can put up numbers, but not at the same level as, you know, the players I mentioned. If you can get an infielder like a Baerga, there's so far and few between. I guess I would grab one. You know, I'm not even sure right now. I have a few players rolling in my head. I'm not even sure who I'd pick as if I had the number 1 choice.
Dave doesn't want to give away any secrets because we're in the same league.
Well,
This show is not limited to people who just want to call for the pay-per-view. If you want to call and ask any general baseball questions to my colleagues and myself, feel free to call 915-0350, and we'll take your calls for that. If you want to order the pay-per-view special, I didn't mention who would be on the special tonight, so let me just read from you. There's a lot of great baseball respected minds on this special. I think everybody knows Keith Olbermann from ESPN and Peter Gammons, well-respected people, right?
Oh, without a doubt, Keith Olbermann actually well-known in the card collecting field also. A lot of people don't realize he's an avid card collector. Peter Gammons, anyone who's seen Peter Gammons' Inside Baseball reports knows what Peter Gammons knows is top-notch. He's the Freddie Edelstein of baseball.
Also, Rod Beaton, John Benson, the Rotisserie Baseball Annual 1994. That's another good one, right? Bill James. Well, we held that book up too many times. Okay. Well, Bill James, and there's just a lot of great baseball minds on that show. That it's a crash course in who to pick for your draft, and it's well worth the $19.95, especially when you get a free book. But if you want to be part of the show, call 915-0350. You can call now. Don't wait till the end of the show, because then we'll be rushing you off the phone. If you call now, we'll spend some time with you. I have some other questions here for the gentleman. How do you? There are people out there who are like, how do I get involved? I'm new. I mean, can I start a league? How do I start a league?
Well, normally, like the league we're in, we have a 10-team league, and we have one guy who's designated as a commissioner. You need someone who's familiar with all the members, a guy who's up on things, who's organized, collect dues, what have you, keep track of trades, all the type of things. So you really need someone who's has a little time on their hands, who's committed to at least keeping the paperwork in order, who can be reached, if you need to call them, that type of thing. I mean, that's crucial. If you have a lot of guys working people, you're busy working or you have your family, you might not have time to keep track of, everything. So you like to play, but, you got to fit it in. So the key thing is to have someone at least who has the time and the know-how at least to get things organized.
Okay. We're going to go to a call. Hi, it's Steve. You're on Talking Baseball.
Hi, my name is Jim. I was wondering, do you guys play strictly rotisserie, or do you play fantasy also?
Well, that's a good question, and I think before they even answer that question, they should probably tell us what the difference is.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that fantasy and rotisserie, people use the terms interchangeably. Actually, rotisserie deals with actually bidding on players. Everyone starts with generally $260, and myself or Dave would throw out a name like Ken Griffey Jr., and it goes around a table, the draft table actually, among 10 teams or 12 teams, however many you have in the league, and everyone bids them up until everybody drops out and somebody actually wins. That's rotisserie baseball at its finest. Fantasy baseball is just a pure draft, where most people draft in what they call serpentine order, which if you have the first pick, you also have the 20th pick. So you might have 10 teams in the league. You go first, and 20th, the guy who goes 10th actually goes 11th. And I think that's an important distinction to make. And a lot of people can play either way with either league. You know, I've been in both leagues before. They're both equally as fun.
Caller?
Yes?
What kind of league do you play in?
I play in a fantasy league.
And is this the first league you've played in?
No, I've been playing for about 4 years now.
And how do you like it?
Oh, it's great.
Very addictive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for our panel?
No. It's just an enjoyable show.
Well, thanks. Thanks for calling, too. We're going to go to Joe on line A. Joe.
Yeah, hi, how you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. A question I have is, I'm wondering who the closers might be on San Diego, well, not San Diego, Seattle and Pittsburgh. I can't believe that Pittsburgh right now is going to give that job to Mark Dewey.
Well, I think Mark Dewey isn't a bad choice, considering who else they have. It basically comes down to Blas Minor or Mark Dewey or John Hope. John Hope has shown very poor control. Mark Dewey actually has had some flashes of brilliance. Blas Minor, I don't know, he's just a guy who, I wouldn't be confident handing the ball to unless I was down by 9 runs or up by 9 runs. And even then, I don't know if Pittsburgh can afford to lose many more games by giving the ball to Blas Minor.
Yeah, I'm looking for like $1 reliever at the end of the draft. I might be able to pick up cheap. And I play in 2 leagues, an American League and a National League. Any ideas on maybe Seattle, since they were going to go with Ted Power, but he's hurt?
Well, Ted Power, I don't think is worth $1.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But if he was going to get saves, I guess he'd be worth it. But he's hurt now.
Yeah.
Questionable. He might be done for. I mean, he's 38, 39 years old now.
Yeah. Ted Power's up in his 30s. It came over the wire the other day. I checked the AP report, and they mentioned that Ted Power's career may be in jeopardy. And Dave and I kind of joked that his career was in jeopardy about 4 years ago. They probably should have just saved us all the grief for the past 4 years. I think what you want to do is look for a relief pitcher on Toronto instead. Maybe Mike Timlin or somebody like that who's going to be a secondary man, because Dwayne Ward's elbow is pretty bad.
Yeah.
He's in real rough shape. I don't know if Dwayne Ward's going to be able to start the season. The AP wire says he won't be able to. I had Ward last year in my fantasy team. I don't want him this year because of injuries. I try to stay away from guys who are hurt, and I think it's important to look at teams who have players that are hurt. Like, for example, Baltimore has Fernandez is hurt. You want to look and say, well, who's going to step into their role? Who's going to fill their role if they can't go? And Ward right now, like I said, is questionable for the season. So Mike Timlin might be a good choice, and you probably could get him for about $1.
Yeah, you think Danny Cox might get some saves there?
Well, I think he'll get saves. It depends. If your league plays net saves, which some leagues do, you probably wouldn't want Cox because he'll probably blow more saves than he'll get.
We play net saves.
Yeah. Then
that's an important distinction. I think maybe you ought to explain to the people who don't know what you're talking about, what you mean by net saves.
Well, people use 3 categories generally as net categories. They'll use net saves, which is your total of saves minus the blown saves. So a guy like Danny Cox might get 10 saves on a year, but he'll probably blow about 12 games, realistically speaking. Net wins is another category where you'll have a guy like Jack McDowell. He won 22 games last year. I believe he lost 10, so he'd be a plus 12. And net stolen bases would be steals minus caught stealing. So a guy like Kenny Lofton will try and steal about 75 times, and he'll make it, say, 60 of them. He's a lot more valuable than Chad Curtis, Chad Curtis might get 60 stolen bases, but he's going to run probably about 100 times, and he's going to get caught 40. So Chad Curtis would only be a plus 20, whereas Kenny Lofton would be say, a plus 45.
Yeah, Brett Butt was another killer in that category.
No doubt about it. Or Polonia, the new Yankee, who's disappointed me last year. Same type of thing. He'll steal bases. He'll get thrown out as many times. Just to elaborate on his question, even a John Franco, everyone's down on him. Everyone's down on the Mets. I would like to think he's not going to be a dollar player, but you should, relatively speaking, get him pretty cheap. And if he has a healthy arm and the Mets do anything,
yeah,
he'll put up some saves.
Now, relievers are pretty scarce in our league. We have players carry over from year to year, and we're pretty much, both leagues are filled up with all the relievers are taken. So we're just trying to find somebody, I'm trying to find somebody I can use. I have Hank in the American League, and I need somebody else. I had John DePoto, but unfortunately what happened with him, having cancer, I lost him. So now I'm trying to find somebody else for that second reliever.
Right, well, with DePoto hurt, though, you're going to have probably Eric Plunk, or you'll have a lesser name will come in to pick up the slack.
Plunk is already taken in our league and capped from last year.
Okay, in the National League, you might want to look at Kerry Taylor from San Diego. I'm sure Gene Harris has been taken already. Gene Harris is a bright young star from San Diego, but Kerry Taylor is going to be putting up solid numbers in a few years. Don't be afraid to look at Colorado. If you can make a trade for like Doug Henry, people say, boy, I don't want anyone from Colorado. Well, Doug Henry's put up amazing numbers in Colorado. And
Henry, or is he on Colorado? I thought he was on Milwaukee.
No, that's Butch Henry. Yeah, you have him backwards. And but you want to look at a team like Colorado and say, boy, they got some good young guys who could actually come in and fill the void.
Yeah, I have Holmes on Colorado already.
Yeah, well, then that's kind of tough to go and take a couple of relievers from the same team. But what you want to do is you want to look at who's going to be a setup reliever. John Franco wouldn't be a bad pick, like Dave said, because if John Franco gets traded, whatever team he goes to, he's going to save some games. So that's important. Norm Charlton has had his share of injuries. He might be available in your league, though, because of that. He is. Yeah, I would definitely grab Norm Charlton, because the Philly reports that I've seen have said that Norm Charlton is looking strong. He wasn't supposed to come back until mid-May. Right now they're saying he might be ready as early as the first or second week of April. And if that's the case, he'd be a steal for $1.
Yeah, you're right. I think he would be a good pickup. All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you for the call. A caller brought up an interesting point in my mind. Like with John Franco, you said if he gets traded from the Mets, wherever he goes, he's going to put up some decent numbers. How do trades work in the leagues you guys play in? How do you orchestrate a deal, and just what exactly goes into it?
Again, normally, assuming you have, again, commissioners vital, that way he might put out a little newsletter for you. He's easily reached. In our league, we have, well, in theory, he's easily reached. He'll put out a weekly statistics report, owner's name, owner's phone number, work number, what have you, assuming everyone agrees where they want to be reached. And normally you're just a phone call away. We'll all have the same type of reports we're looking at. I made a few trades with Stan last year. It really depends on what roster spot you might need, who he has. Just like in real baseball, I need this player for this player. There might be a transaction fee, which is a given, but it's nothing more than that. So basically,
it's just a phone call from one person to another, and you're solving one person's needs, trying to solve your needs, and hopefully trying to solve their needs, and not be taken advantage of, just like real baseball.
Well, that's no fun. You want to try to take advantage of someone.
Well, of course you do, but you don't say
that. Exactly.
Like Stan, you told me an interesting story the other day about how you on your computer you learned of an injury, and you were able to put somebody on disabled list.
Yeah, well, I've done that in the past where when Tim Salmon, for example, had got hurt towards the end of last year, I happened to pick it up on the Newswire, on the AP Newswire, which I have, because you can get those through the online services like USA Today SportsCenter or CompuServe or Prodigy. And I heard that Tim Salmon had gotten hurt in a late night game, and it was on a Wednesday night. My team's deadline is Thursday at noon. So because I found that out, I was able to put Tim Salmon on the disabled list and replace him with another player. And as it worked out, I came in second in that league. Had I not gotten Tim Salmon on the disabled list that week and picked up another player, I picked up Jeff Conine, who finished the season pretty strong. Had I not been able to do that, I probably would have came in third place or finished out of the running for anything.
Information like that is what will make you succeed in your fantasy and rotisserie league play. And ordering the pay-per-view special for $19.95, the ESPN pay-per-view special. It's called ESPN Baseball Tonight's Great Rotisserie Pay-per-view Special with Keith Olbermann and Peter Gammons. And it can be seen Tuesday, March 29th on channels 26 and 66 at 10 p.m. But not only that, if you call the show and get to talk to these two gentlemen and order the event, we'll give you a free book that'll help you succeed in the league. The Rotisserie League Baseball book and the Bill James player ratings. You don't get both, you only get to pick one, but either one will help you. And the price of the book will just about cover the cost of the event. So you get in, you get your moment of fame on TV talking to two great gentlemen, knowledgeable. But we'll take a call first. Hi, it's Steve, and you're on Talking Baseball.
Hi, Steve. This is Ollie. I'm wondering, who do you think are the top three catchers in the fantasy league this year, and who do you think are the sleeper player?
Well, if you're talking catchers, I think the top catcher right now is Chris Hoyles. Of course, I'm a little bit biased because he's on my fantasy team. But I like Chris Hoyles, I like Rick Wilkins. Darren Daulton, I like his statistics, but he's 33 years old. His knees are starting to break down a little bit. He's going through a nasty divorce right now with his wife, model Lynn Austin. I don't know if Darren Daulton could put up the numbers he's put up in the past. He started to slow down in the past couple of years. I think that he'd be a chancy pick at this point. I think Mike Piazza, he put up one good year. I don't know if I'd be tempted to take him, though, because of the sophomore jinx. Pudge Rodriguez, always a solid pick. I think the sleeper in the catching ranks is Javi Lopez from the Braves. Has a strong arm, has a lot of power. I think it's important to get a guy like that and to get a catcher who's strong, because you can carry him over from year to year.
Ollie?
Yes.
Want to follow up on your question?
Yes, I do. Who do you think is a sleeper overall, not just in the catching ranks?
I'm looking at the Tomei, the third baseman from Cleveland. He's a little-known player. Cleveland hasn't been a widely publicized team, and I'm hoping to draft him, assuming Stan doesn't get him first. Put up some good numbers. He's going to be relatively, mid-priced, 25, 30 homer type guy. As long as he cracks the lineup, makes the team, makes the lineup, can catch and throw a little bit. He'll be in that lineup with Eddie Murray, a few other good hitters, Baerga. I think he'll be a good pick.
And another good guy from Cleveland would be Manny Ramirez, who a lot of people don't know about. He was a AAA Player of the Year last year. He's going to get the right field position. Whenever you see a rookie handed the right field job or handed the left field job, as Jeffrey Hammonds is going to have in Baltimore, you know that this guy is something special. And Hammonds is a top-rated guy. I'm a little concerned he had a bulging neck disc problem that kept him out of the lineup in September. But you're going to have some solid players. Steve Carsey, who was traded for Ricky Henderson last year, basically Oakland loaned Toronto Ricky Henderson. They got Steve Carsey, and people are saying Carsey is better than Todd Van Poppel will ever be. And Van Poppel, as everyone knows, was one of the top draft picks in the country just several years ago. So Carsey is a solid pick. There's a lot of sleepers out there. You really have to do your homework to find out who they are, to read between the lines. As Dave said, Jim Thome. A lot of people don't know about Jim Thome. 2-3 years ago, Cleveland thought he was going to be the next Mike Schmidt. He had a couple of rough years. He gets his confidence shaken easily. He lets his defense affect his offense. But this spring, they say he's putting it all together, and he's just hitting some monster home runs down the Cactus League.
And part of doing your homework is calling 915-0350 and talking to these gentlemen and ordering the great Rotisserie pay-per-view special brought to you by ESPN. Another interesting point that came up during the conversation, which I wanted to follow up upon, is injuries. How do you replace an injured player?
Well, the best way to replace an injured player is to scan the available players, obviously, and look for someone who's going to fit the category that you most need. If you need a shortstop and you see your team is way behind in stolen bases, well, you have to make a decision then. Do you want to forsake stolen bases for the year, or do you want to go out and get a shortstop who steals bases? You might want to look and say, well, Tony Fernandez will steal me some bases, but I'm already in 6th place. There's no way I can catch the leader. There's only 10 weeks left or 12 weeks left. You might want to give up on that and say, maybe I'll go for a Will Cordero or Jay Bell, somebody who's going to hit a few more home runs and help me catch somebody in another category. So it's important to follow up on players and know what categories they're strong in. You really have to rate each player individually in their categories to make sure that it's somebody who's strong where you need him at. Because you can draft a roster of 16 fielders who are all strong in steals, and you may win the steals category and get 10 points for that in a 10-team league, but you're not going to win other categories. You're not going to win power. You're not going to win RBI. So you need a balanced team, and that's one way that fantasy and rotisserie baseball is like real baseball. You have to have balance among the offensive categories to win. When you're drafting a team, is there any league rules that require you draft a first baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, a third baseman, or can you just go for the best available talent out there who's going to put up the best available statistics to you?
I mean, basically, most leagues have roughly the same rules. There's a certain number of positional players you have to take. You take 2 position plays, infield players, 2 catchers, 5 outfielders, 9 pitchers for the most part. So you are definitely restricted. That's why we brought up earlier, there are so many, very few amount of good infielders that can hit a second base or shortstop. So you have to pick 2. And if there are only 5 to 10 quality hitters, it falls off so dramatically. You're going to be stuck with some people who are, run-of-the-mill players. You're going to take chances on players that aren't even playing. So it's very restricted in that respect.
We're going to go to Mark on the main line. Mark, welcome to Talking Baseball.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I got to tell you, I ordered the event because it is that last-minute info that you want, which I think is pretty good. Plus, I think Oberman's pretty funny.
Well, not only is it the information that you want to get, you're going to be entertained by watching this. Hopefully like you're entertained right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was wondering if I could just throw a couple of guys out that are on my team and see what your guys think about it.
Go right ahead.
Rondell White from the Expos.
Rondell White, he's basically being handed an outfield job. Or he might get the first base job, but they're pretty undecided right now. I think he's going to be an important player there because Moise Salou, again, back to the injuries, he broke his leg last year, and probably one of the worst things I've seen on TV since Joe Theismann got hurt by Lawrence Taylor.
Right, that was ugly.
And I think that he's going to be a good player this year. Rondell White and Cliff Floyd probably going to be carrying the Expos for a few years, so they'd be a strong player. It's much to have.
All right, how about Andre Dawson?
I'm a big fan of Andre Dawson. Assuming they could protect him in the lineup a little bit, give him some rest. He gets injured every year. I can remember. He should be able to put up decent numbers, 20-out homers, assuming the rest of the lineup pitches in a little bit. I'm a big fan of his, so he'll get his 20, 25 homers, 80, 85 RBIs.
Okay, Mark, any other questions for our panel?
Just 2 pitchers, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
John Smiley from the Reds.
Kind of a sour point for me. I actually had him as one of my top selections last year. I thought I really liked John Smiley. I used to really appreciate what he could do with the baseball, but he had a little bit of a rough time last year. Are you going to save this player, or is this something you're thinking of picking? Or
no, it's somebody that I inherited off another team. Somebody had him last year.
Can you disown him without?
Can you release him?
If he's a new player, you should get him relatively cheap, and if he had a little mechanics problem, at least that's what I was told.
How about Greg Swindell from the Astros?
Well, you've touched on my favorite pitcher who coincidentally was on my team last year. I drafted Swindell fairly early, and I thought Swindell would be a solid bona fide pitcher. And actually, Greg had a little eating problem last year. I think he was about 50 pounds overweight, in all seriousness. And that put a lot of weight on his knees and on his shoulders. He couldn't find the plate, which he normally has trouble doing anyway. So it just made for an all-around bad year for Swindell. The Astros aren't counting on him this year. They're more looking to Pete Harnisch as the ace, who they expect to start opening day, and Doug Drabeck. Swindell is actually on the trading block. They've been trying to trade for Anthony Young also, so they're definitely looking for starting pitching. I wouldn't rely on Swindell. I disagree with Dave a little bit. I like Smiley's chances this year. I think Smiley was hurt last year, but he left mid-season. He got his arm taken care of, had surgery on it, and I think Smiley might be a good sleeper pick because he won't cost you a lot.
Mark, how many leagues do you play in?
Just one, Steve.
Just one?
Just one.
How long have you been involved?
About 10 years.
About 10 years. What's the best you've done?
A tight third-place finish.
Well, that's why you need to order the pay-per-view special for $19.95.
That's why I'm going to order the special.
Okay.
If you had to pick between the two, I always use a rule of thumb. if I have a pitcher who's pitching in the Astrodome, or at Three Rivers, Three Rivers is if you look at the offensive numbers there, they're tremendous. There's such a wide disparity. So if you were to pick one or the other, I just look at the ball field they're playing in. I'll say, well, I'm going to take someone who's pitching in the Astrodome.
Yeah, that's a good point. You definitely want to get a pitcher who's going to be coming through for you in a big park like the Astrodome. You know there's not a lot of homers hitting the Astrodome. You don't want to pick somebody who's going to be pitching in the Metrodome like Scott Erickson, who I made the mistake of pitching last year for a couple of weeks span when one of my guys got hurt. Actually, it was Swindell who got hurt. You don't want a guy like that who's going to destroy your ERA. If you pick the wrong guy, he's going to kill your team. You can have 5 solid starters, and that 6th starter you pick, if he's not a guy who's at least mediocre, who's going to just keep you where you're at, he can drag your numbers down. And a guy like Scott Erickson or Kevin Tapani, for that matter, can really do that to you, and they can just totally destroy your team. And I think it's real important that you do your research and you do your homework, and you try to pick guys in the right ballparks when you can. When in doubt, pick a guy like a Jeff Juden who's pitching in a big ballpark. You definitely want to get someone who's pitching in a park where there's not going to be a lot of homers. Milwaukee is a perfect example. They have a lot of young pitchers who you could definitely get fairly cheap. You probably even get Teddy Higuera, who keeps trying to make his comebacks every year. He's not going to get killed in Milwaukee. You have to worry about him on the road. So that's another consideration.
Well, you also have to consider now the new ballparks in the American League, like in Texas and Cleveland. They're going to be much smaller than the other ballparks that they played in.
Sure, that's a consideration too. In Cleveland, actually, when they played by the lake, which is probably the coldest baseball stadium I've ever been at in my life, I don't think the temperature gets above 32 degrees there. The wind is always whipping off the lake, and it's swirling around. It's holding a lot of homers up. So because of that, you really would want to take some Cleveland pitchers in the past. But now, it looks like some balls will be flying out of there, so you might want to consider that when drafting Indian hitters. Normally you'll look at the Indians and say, gee, I don't know if I want anybody from that team, but as they're rebuilding the team, that's an important consideration. I know Dave likes Will Clark, who's going to be playing in Texas, and I think Dave would agree with me that Clark should put up some good numbers this year.
No doubt about it. If Canseco's healthy, you have a lot of protection in the lineup, and that's a key. If you can draft a good player on a bad ball club, that's why some people with Salmon, for example, sophomore year jinx, regardless of that, I don't see the players in the lineup that could protect him if they want to pitch around him. Walks don't count for anything in rotisserie. You have a Chili Davis, he's about 80 years old now.
And he might be traded.
What type of numbers is he going to put up? So you might want to look at that also. Who's around the lineup? Who's in the lineup? Who's going to protect your hitters?
Once again, it's strategy. Which is why I get in it. Is a certain amount of skill and homework involved in picking a team. There's homework. There's follow-up work. You gotta every day. You gotta read the newspapers and just be totally up to date and have the most current information. And it's important to have the most current information going into the draft.
Sure, you need to know things like we see in the paper all the time about Anthony Young maybe going to California for JT Snow.
Now, would he be a good pick, Anthony Young?
Well, if he goes to California, he's a great pick because he's going to start there. He's going to be right behind Finley and Langston. Joe McGrain went out with a season-ending injury earlier, so you don't want Joe McGrain. You'd want Anthony Young if he's going out there. They have guys like Phil Leftwich, Hilly Hathaway, a lot of names that aren't household names to most people, but if you've been doing your homework, you know what's going on. You should know that Brett Saberhagen, the Mets are trying desperately to trade him. Saberhagen's a great pitcher. He's not going to do nothing in the net wins category unless he gets traded, but if he gets traded to Toronto, you're going to get Brett Saberhagen for a steal. Saberhagen's a great pick to pick around the 10th or 11th round because Saberhagen will be a guy, if he stays with the Mets, he'll keep you above water just barely. But if he goes to Toronto, forget about it. He's going to put up great numbers. He's going to put up Kevin Appier, Greg Maddux type numbers.
I think right now what we're going to do is we have a special, for the people watching the show, we have a trivia question. And the trivia question is going to come up on the screen. There it is. Several years ago, the Orioles traded Pete Harnisch, Kurt Schilling, and Steve Finley to the Astros. For who? I think you guys might know the answer. And whoever calls in and has the first person who calls in who has the answer to this trivia question will win a free showing of the Baseball Tonight's Great Rotisserie pay-per-view special. So if you know the answer to that question, call 915-0350 right away, and you can get to win this. So if you did your homework and you're just up on this, call the number. I hear the phone ringing. I think we may have some. No, call in right now and and take your best shot. What is the future of fantasy leagues? Are we in our infancy, or is it still growing? What do you feel?
I would think there's definitely room to grow. I mean, the biggest everyone has a computer, like Stan was saying, CompuServe and all these different networking type things. I think that you're going to see more of that, where you can have leagues on there on these different type of in-home computer. No paperwork. You come home, pop on your PC, and get into a league very, very easy. And that's I think that's the future.
Dave, you work on Wall Street. A lot of professional people there, obviously. What is it like on Wall Street and where you work? Is there a lot of players where you work?
Yeah, many people are involved in fantasy leagues there. A lot of the guys are, they played Little League, they played Pony League, and they miss it, And this is a way they can get a little bit more involved. So if you look for a player, they look in. Where I am, we have a lot of automated systems. There's news rolling by. Hey, Wade Boggs went 3 for 3. You see somebody, clench his fist and say, hey, it's my player, You've
had days of work where you're supposed to be working and you're on the phone with fellow workers and saying, I want to trade so-and-so for so-and-so?
I think what keeps people interested in fantasy baseball is you watch ESPN's Baseball Tonight, you see Mo Vaughn went 4 for 4 with 3 home runs and say, great, he's on my team. Or you might be saying, darn, he's on the guy who's chasing me in the home run title. That's important to look for. What fantasy baseball does is it keeps your interest in the sport. California's playing Oakland. Phil Leftwich is going up against Todd Van Poppel. 99% of the country might not have any interest in that game outside of the Oakland, California area, but people are going to be watching it because they say, hey, I got Leftwich on my team. I got Van Poppel. I got Tim Salmon. I want to see what these guys are going to do. I think fantasy baseball just really helps baseball become more interesting. It can be boring to sit there for 9 innings if you have no interest in watching 2 teams that neither one is your favorite. You don't know any players on the teams, but fantasy baseball will make you more interested in it.
Well, that's a good point because you might be watching a blowout, for example, but the final score is not what you're looking at. You're looking at individual player statistics, and you want your players to do well.
Especially in the later part of the year, you might be a lifelong Indians fan, and come September, they're not in the race anymore. You have 2 starting pitchers. You're going to want to know what they're doing. There might be 5,000 people in the stands, but you have some interest.
Okay, we're going to go to line B. Hi, it's Steve.
Hello, it's Carlos again.
Carlos, I understand you have the answer to our trivia question.
Yes.
And the answer is?
Glenn Davis.
Yay. And you won?
Yes.
How about that?
Wonderful. It's great.
Okay, do you have any questions?
But not really. I kind of agree, though, at the point you're making earlier. Fantasy baseball helps support interest for baseball, and those quote-unquote purists, I think, they're giving rotisserie fantasy baseball a bad knock.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Thanks for being part of the show, and thanks for playing, and most importantly, thanks for winning.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. 915-0350 is the number to be part of the show. We're getting toward the end of our show now, and if you want to get in, you better call quick. And if you want to order the pay-per-view special for $19.95 and get the 2 free books, 1 book per call, call now. Hi, it's Steve, and you're on Talking Baseball.
Hello, Steve. I love your show. You guys do a hell of a job there, especially the comments made about Todd Van Poppel and watching baseball in terms of making it more interesting. It's certainly true. I belong to a fantasy baseball league myself, and I tell you, watching it certainly makes it much more interesting, especially those long 9-inning games.
Great. What's your question? You have a question?
Well, my question is, well, I just like Howard Stern and Baba Booey and all those other guys, and I think they make it worthwhile.
So do I. I listen to Howard every morning. How'd you like his book?
Do you think he's gonna win the governor?
I don't think he's going to win the governor, but he will get the goofy vote like he says. What do you guys think?
Well,
do you think Howard plays in the rotisserie league?
I don't know. I don't know if Howard plays in rotisserie, but he has enough guys working in the studio for him, enough comedy writers, he could start his own league.
There you go. 915-0350 is the number to be part of the show and to get the free books if you order the pay-per-view special for only $19.95. The special is practically free if you get the book. Any closing thoughts tonight about playing the league? What you recommend to people coming into the leagues? Is it good to come into a league, maybe one league? Do you recommend people playing in multiple leagues? Your thoughts, Stan?
I think as many leagues as you can get into and keep an interest in is just more to your benefit. The only problem you run into is if you're playing in 3 or 4 leagues, you might have Jack McDowell pitching against Jim Abbott, and in each league they're on your team. So but that could happen in any fantasy league, and it often there were many a time that Dave or I had the same pitchers from our teams going against each other, so you're almost guaranteed a win and a loss. And sometimes
when you join these leagues though, besides playing for pure enjoyment, what's at the end of the rainbow when the season's over? Is there?
Normally you'll have there's like an entry fee. There are dues during the year, transaction fees. If you do trade, if you drop a player, if someone gets injured occasionally, it's going to happen. Normally there's a prize for someone who wins the league. Maybe first, second, and third might get something out of it. I could become a rich person playing, but it gives you something to strive for. You'd rather obviously coming first than last, and it keeps it a little bit more interesting, having a little bit of something on the table for you at the end.
And what's the financial cost to get in?
Well, that can vary from league to league. There's some leagues that charge you specifically just for statistics, because what happens invariably is you ask 10 guys who's going to do statistics, and all 10 say, "Gee, I don't have the time for it." So you usually get a stat service, and that could run anywhere from $25 to $50 a team. Anything on top of that with transaction fees or entry fees usually go into a pot. And like I said, this happens in some leagues, not in every league. So it can be real interesting.
Okay. Once again, just as a final reminder, you order our pay-per-view special, Baseball Tonight's Great Rotisserie pay-per-view special, and it's on 4 or 5 times, several times. Do your homework. It'll help you do well in the draft. I want to thank Stan Petreska for being part of the show, and Dave Chesney, both avid Rotisserie League players. Thanks for coming on. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time.
Okay. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time.